Today, we're diving headfirst into the wild, wet, and totally unregulated chaos of Action Park, the infamous New Jersey amusement park that became a legend for all the wrong reasons. We're talking broken bones, missing teeth, and a complete disregard for the safety of guests and employees alike. Part nostalgic fever dream, part cautionary tale, this film explores what happens when profit, adrenaline, and teenage invincibility collide. Was Action Park a symbol of freedom or a lawsuit waiting to happen? Buckle up, or don't, because apparently that wasn't required, and join us on a ride where the truth is often stranger and way more dangerous than fiction. You're listening to Real Stories, Real Problems with Rachael and Roxanne.
Hi, Rachel. That was an awesome interview, or awesome opening.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I cannot tell you. I was on the internet a few weeks ago and I saw just a single image of the swirly, and
Right.
I saw a comment about kids getting bit with their own teeth. And when I went and I looked it up and I saw that there was a documentary about it, I was like, I have
Oh,
to
hell
know.
yeah.
And then the
Oh,
fact that,
I'll tell you, I graduated high school in 1985. So this was the Generation X death machine. And my parents, loving me in that way, refused to ever let me go to Action Park, especially because Action Park actively tried to kill a number of my friends. Like, she's like, no. My mom was like, no. And my dad was all like, yeah, but she's a tough girl. And mom's like, no.
yeah, oh, my husband did not grow up in Jersey, but he grew up in kind of the tri-state area. And when we watched this documentary, when it was over, he went and called his mom and said, "Thank you so much for never letting me go." Because he had begged and thrown a fit the way teenage boys do because he wanted to go. It was the only water park in New England, basically, anything
Right,
in New
right.
York City in that area. So he really wanted to go. And she was just like, "No, not on your life. There's no way you're going to Action Park."
I mean, having grown up in New Jersey for 58 years, um, it's a very interesting climate destination topographically, because you can go skiing in northern New Jersey, but just 120 miles south is the beach and the Jersey Shore and Atlantic City and the gambling. So whatever your particular idea of fun is, you can have it in New Jersey. So it was very logical for Uncle Gene, who we'll talk about in a minute, to want to situate his death machine in in Vernon Valley.
Oh my goodness, yes. But when I saw that, I was trying to figure out when this documentary was made, and I was kind of bouncing back and forth through the years, and then it turns out it was released in 2020, just like every other documentary. So
Because nobody was doing anything else. They couldn't leave the house.
no, it was just whatever media machines were like, "We need content. What have you got that's in the hopper? Send it over right now." And this, I think, was one of those things. So in 2020, we all
Thank God it was.
yeah. In 2020, we were all trying not to get COVID and we were watching documentaries on Netflix and YouTube and whatnot. And
Yep.
this was one of them. And oh my goodness, like, I cannot tell you the number of times I literally recoiled and screamed while watching this documentary.
Oh, yes. Yes. And what's interesting is I remember obviously the TV commercials, and it made it seem like the most wonderful, awesome thing that you could possibly experience. And then I realized that the people in the commercials, they were not actual guests at Action Park. They worked there because because if you remember the 80s at all, you remember big hair. And big hair and water parks do not mix. But all of the women and in the commercials had the perfect Aquanet solidified hair. They weren't guests, paid actors.
Oh my goodness. Yes. And then like this documentary essentially was about hypercapitalism and what happens when somebody who wants nothing but to make a bunch of money and does not want to have any rules in his way, what happens when they let him? And the answer is death and injury and destruction.
And lawsuits galore.
And when this documentary opens, they one of the very first things that they're talking about, somebody's quoted as saying it's chaos summer park with very little oversight and too much alcohol, and that is an accurate description of
And
Action
weed,
Park.
so much weed.
So, oh yeah,
my
oh my
friends
goodness.
would my friends would come to school on Monday after spending the weekend at Action Park, and they were still a little stoned. So yeah, no regulations, no searches. You could go in there with a freaking gun and nobody care.
Well, and they talked about how for a lot of people, the appeal of the park was the fact that there were no rules and you could get hurt and you could like that it was a little bit dangerous. Kind of
Yeah,
like every teenage boy in the area, I'm sure, was like, "Oh yeah, I got to go do that."
yeah. Oh, I'm sure. And when I got to the part in the documentary about they would let like drunken 14-year-olds run the rides because there were no child labor laws that they acknowledged, and that he made up his own insurance company to launder money. Oh my god, it just kept getting weirder. Every time I thought they can't possibly top this, they suddenly did.
Oh. And even like they had a quote from Jimmy Kimmel who said every member of my family was injured at Action Park at one point or
There
another.
you go.
Apparently this was just like the thing to do if you were in this area. And I
Hmm.
would mock, but I grew up not far from the Tiger King and the whole like, let's split
Yeah.
a room with 30 tigers that have not been treated very well and see what happens. Like, this kind of stuff was just rampant all through the 80s and the 70s, and like
Hmm.
it was everywhere. And Gene Mulvihill was the name of the guy who created this park. And he
Hmm.
was described as kind of a mix between P.T. Barnum and Donald Trump, which I feel like was a fair description.
That no, that really is. Yeah, exactly.
And he was a broker. He was like a Wall Street broker who was big in the penny stock market, which anyone who's seen Wolf of Wall Street or knows anything about, investing knows that penny stocks are garbage. It was what can we
Yeah,
steal from people who think that they're investing? It
right.
was completely worthless. And he started a company and he was trying to do this thing. And then Vernon Township, New Jersey, Hugh Hefner opened the Bunny Lodge there. And they were
Oh.
really like pushing that this was going to be a new destination. It was going to be the new Vegas or the new Orlando or the new, like, it was going to be
Hmm.
a tourist destination. And they were trying, man, they were trying to make it happen. And Gene Mulvihill saw this and was like, okay. And he bought or like was leasing the space to put this amusement park,
Hmm.
and he just was the worst person. Like I feel like I could have gotten a bunch of French bulldogs and released them and they could have designed better rides than what was put in Action Park. Oh my
The
goodness.
thing that was going on that you need to know at the time was gambling had just been legalized the year before Action
Ah.
Park was founded. And a whole bunch of real estate developers, including Donald Trump, thought this is going to be the Las Vegas of the East Coast. And they did everything in their power to make it gaudy and opulent much like actual Las Vegas, only without all the Elvises, which were the best part. And so that's when things like Action Park and Palisades Park which did not try to kill anybody, you know, started opening because they wanted that tourist uh attraction, and they wanted to start opening casinos up there as well. And it was a couple of years later that on indigenous American reservations it was legalized, but it never got legalized in northern New Jersey. And a lot of developers and entrepreneurs took a real hit to the purse.
Yeah, and I mean, Action Park was built in 1978, so this was the tail end of the 70s, and he had this essentially like he had a ski resort that he bought or leased or whatever, and he wanted to make it functional in the summer too. He didn't want to just have a few months where people were skiing and have that be it. So he wanted to put in these rides, and it was immediate like in 1978 when it opened, people immediately started were very aware that it was a dangerous fucking place to be, and their kids should not be there. Well, and it was so funny because they were talking to several people who had been guests at the park, people who had gone to the park at one point or another. And one guy, very like kind of gentle, nerdy looking dude, glasses and, sweater and whatnot, was talking about how when he was a kid, his parents did not want him to go. It was essentially banned. And one of his friends was a child of the, classic 80s divorce. And the dad was spending way more money and taking him crazy places because, this is how he was making
Parents
it
were
for not being
pitted
there anymore.
against each other.
And
Yep. And whoever bought them the most toys won. Yeah.
right. And this kid's dad invited him to go and was paying for him to go. And so his parents knew it's a free trip with a friend. We can't tell him no. Like this is, and so they had to sit him down and give him a very sobering warning about using his best judgment and being safe
Mm.
and not hurting himself while he's there. Um, so it was clear to people early on, like basically as soon as it was built, that this was not a safe place to be. And of course, that was just
Right.
some part of the appeal for the kids, I think, sometimes.
Well, kids think they're invincible, you know? Oh my God. I think my favorite part of the whole thing was when they were the man in a ball. And I watched that. I had to keep pausing the video because I couldn't believe what I was actually seeing. Please describe for our audience, Rachel, the man in the ball.
So it was called The Man in a Ball in a Ball, and
Oh, okay. I forgot the other
it
ball.
was like a bowl thing with a seat inside where you would get in, and then it was surrounded by a larger metal ball that was covered in bearings and wheel casings and things, so it looked like it was gonna roll and be all crazy. But it was just designed to go down this like track. It was supposed to roll down this PVC track down the hill, but PVC expands in the heat, and it can get into the high 90s easy
Yeah,
in
easy up
in
there.
Jersey. Like that's not even a question. And so the track would fall apart. And they talked about they sent somebody down in the Man in the Ball, and he's going down the track, and it jumped the track and ran down the hill and across a highway because there was a highway that went through the middle of this park. One half was like go-karts and stuff, and one half was water rides. And he ended up across the highway, did not get hit by a car, and ended up in the water, like on the other side. So lucky that this he did not die. So lucky he did not drown. Like like this was
Well, if that had happened today, he would have been killed because I know that a highway very well. I've driven on it many, many times, and it's now expanded to a third lane on each side. So, yeah, there's no way that he would have survived. And his parents would have to go the rest of their lives when people ask, "Oh, how did your son pass away?" He was in a ball and a ball. Okay.
oh my god.
That's just embarrassing.
But every ride that they showed was worse than the one before. And and so they were showing like that it was broken into three parts. It was Alpine World and Water World and Motor World. And so they had it broken
Right.
into like place so they were trying to keep things separate, but the very first ride that they talked about, and the one that made me want to watch this documentary, was the Cannonball Loop. And when you think
Oh,
about
yes.
roller coasters that do a loop de loop and you're upside down in the roller coaster, and like
Mm.
they wanted to do that but with a water slide. But the human body doesn't bend that way.
No, no, and physics is a thing.
And so they built this water slide. It was a fully enclosed tube and it did the loop de loop, and it was at such a steep angle. And it was completely dark. There were no lights. There was nothing for you to be able to see anything as you were going down. And Gene Mulvihill, he made everybody call him Uncle Gene. So Uncle Gene would show up and they would build this ride and nobody wanted to go on it. And he started offering employees $100 to test the slide. And so the first couple of people go down it and are battered, slammed against the
Hmm.
tubes, like come out, their faces are bleeding. And then the next couple of people come down and they have all the same stuff, but lacerations all down their body. And they opened up the tube to see what was causing this. The first kids that went down beat their faces against it so hard that they lost their teeth and their teeth got stuck in the slide, so that people that were coming down after them were being bitten by the teeth of the people who had gone down before them.
That is the singular weirdest injury story I could possibly imagine.
When I looked it up, because they made a comment about how um the tube was just completely way too steep and you'd lose contact with the loop and it would slam you against everything. And they said that the ride gets up to 9 Gs. And I went and looked it up. Fighter pilots max out
Yeah,
6 Gs. So these
yes. And
people
then
were
they
going,
black out.
oh
Oh,
my goodness, these
yes.
people were going faster than fighter pilots in flight down this
Hmm.
slide with nothing between their bodies and the fiberglass slide. So I'm surprised they survived it at all.
Right,
Like,
right.
this is the worst thing that I've ever seen. And I have always been pretty risk averse. There is no way that I would have gone down that slide. There's no way that I would have gone to this park. Like, the second I showed up
No,
and saw how dangerous stuff was, I would have left, even as a teenager. But I had
right.
plenty of friends who were like, this isn't dangerous enough. What if we lit it on fire? Who would have?
Fire, there he.
Oh my God, it was just crazy. And so this is the first one they showed, and I was like, this has got to be the worst thing. No, not even close was
No, it
this the
was
worst
not.
ride.
Not even close to the worst thing.
And they had something that was called Cannonball Falls, and it was designed so that you were going down this steep incline, and then it shot you out into the air like 10 feet into midair before dropping you into a 17-foot deep pool. And you went down so fast and you got thrown so far into midair that it left people disoriented and they regularly needed to be rescued because they would land in the water, but they couldn't tell which way was up or forward. And like when you saw the lifeguards and whatnot, they did not give half a shit. They were just like, go, go, go. They were shoving. Nobody was checking to see if people were coming out safe or needed help on the other end. And
Right, right. I've wiped out a couple times in the ocean, and it is very disorienting because you don't know which way is up, because gravity is different when you're underwater, and it's terrifying. I can't even. I mean, people got flayed, their skin got torn off, their hair got pulled out of their scalp. Lost fingers, not damaged, lost, freaking amputated fingers. But Uncle Gene, he persevered.
well, and one of the common injuries that they said happened was you were told cross your arms over your chest when you were going down water rides or when you were jumping into the
Right,
pool. And people didn't. They flailed their arms out and were trying to, this was before Instagram and stuff. I don't know what they thought they were posing for. But but they were trying
right.
to like be cool in the air, and they would hit the water with such force that it would dislocate their shoulder because they didn't have their arms crossed over their chest. So
Hmm.
this was just injury junction. I do not know what it was called Traction Park, just colloquially by
Yes.
people going, because it was
Oh,
understood.
yes, yes. Yes, no, I have a friend who I mistakenly thought worked for Action Park. Turns out he worked for another amusement park in New Jersey that did not try to kill people. But his older brother uh had gone to Action Park secretly because his parents were not going to allow him. And what a shock. He had broken his collarbone or his shoulder or something, so not only did he get injured, he got in trouble with his mom and dad on top of everything else. Because parents were absolutely terrified of this place.
As they should have been.
Mhm.
And granted, this was the late 70s, early 80s, and kids were like climbing construction zones for fun and like finding abandoned buildings. And we were
Oh,
just,
yeah. Yeah, if it was rusted or rotted, we would play on it. Yeah. And at Action Park, if the rides didn't kill you, the food certainly could.
oh, yeah, they had a whole section of the documentary about how the food was basically old and not stored properly. And they showed some of the tricks of how they would like make the food seem palatable. And by the time you were no longer feeling okay, you were home, so you weren't causing too much problem. But this was just the craziest thing, and they talked about how people designing these rides did not have engineering degrees, and that they had
No.
tried to get hired by Walt Disney World or Six Flags, and the people were like, "No, you're not qualified to design rides." And Uncle Gene was like, "What do you got? I got a cocktail napkin and a Sharpie. Show me what you got."
He was like trying to MacGyver an entire amusement park. It was like he kept asking himself, what would happen if dot dot dot. Well, like you said, what would happen is destruction, injury, death, and lawsuits.
Oh my god, and even one guy in the documentary said, that it was like they were doing bumps of coke before saying, "What if we drilled a hole in the side of a mountain and shot kids 20 feet in the air out of it?" Like, they just there was no logic or reasoning behind what they were doing besides, "This sounds cool."
Right. And Gene approved of everything. You know, he never said maybe we should bring in some technical engineers or, maybe some people with construction experience.
Well, and even my daughter was watching this with me, and she at one point said, "These people went to jail for designing these things, got out and started designing Boeing airplanes, didn't they?" And I was like, "You're very funny, but no."
That's funny to me too because I have a cousin who works for Boeing and I love him to death, but I thank God he doesn't work on actual planes. Let's just put it that way. Um, I could just imagine your daughter watching. I'd love to know what her reaction would.
She had no desire to ever go to any place like this. She is very
Yeah,
much like I was, where I was concerned about the safety of things. And she's
yeah.
very much the same, where she does not want to do a thing that is too dangerous. And she's happy to learn to ride a bike or, do the things. But anything that seems like it's this, she has no
Mhm.
interest. And the whole time we were
It's like
watching it, she would just scream with laughter, and we were making so much noise. Finally, my husband was like, "You guys need to shut up because I cannot hear."
and what our listeners need to understand is Rachel's family is very loud because Rachel has a slight hearing deficiency.
Yeah, I have hearing loss. He has ADHD, and between us, we are the loudest people you have ever met. It's just how
I
it.
love you both. She said, "I love you both." You're awesome.
But
He's
yeah, so we're being too loud for my husband. That's a.
right. That's funny. That was funny. It seemed that after I finished watching the documentary, I'm like, Children Park is a place that you're sentenced to rather than want to go to voluntarily. You pay good hard earned cash to not go on these rides. I mean, it's like being on an experimental drug. You don't know what it's going to do to you.
And just everything was worse than the thing they showed before. They had a ride that was inspired by zero gravity airplanes. So it was designed to make you take flight as you went down the slide, but there was no cushion. So when you came back down, you hit basically cement, and it hurt children so badly. And the super speed slide apparently was like free falling onto a water slide that basically just shot water right up your butthole. It was like the world's worst bidet.
That's exactly the word I was thinking of. And what was the ride, or I can't even call them rides really. Stunts, like Jackie Chan wouldn't attempt half this stuff. The one where they had like 5 injuries a day, sometimes more,
Oh,
in the medical tent.
they had um the aqua scoot where you rode the plastic sled down the slide and it shot
Mhm.
you out the bottom, but if you didn't lean back, it was going to injure you. And like there were a couple of guys in the documentary who were like, if you did not lean back, your testicles were going to get crushed by the aqua scoot. And to
Mm.
make that worse, the aqua scoot had bees nesting in it, so if you didn't go fast, you were going to be stung by bees.
As if it could get any more danger. Let's add bees to it.
And
Or
then
like
they
you
had
said,
like
set it on fire.
And they had something called the Tarzan swing where you would hold a rope and swing out and release over the water. But you weren't releasing over a pool. It was a natural stream filled with trout, and it was freezing. And so you would fall. And apparently, this was just teenage boys in the late 70s, early 80s. They would pull down their shorts and like moon people as they were jumping. And like, but you would hit that water, and it was so cold, it would knock the breath out of you. And you couldn't get out of the way, and you couldn't swim away. It would knock
Mhm.
women's swimsuit tops off. And like, this was the worst
I,
thing I've
I
ever seen.
when my uncle was in the Navy during World War II on board an aircraft carrier, and he accidentally got set on fire. Accidentally, no, yeah, it was World War II, and his initial instinct was to jump into the ocean. That will kill you. That will definitely kill you. The temperature difference between even though it was the South Pacific, it was so they put him out with a regular fire extinguisher. But and that's what was happening to these people more or less on the Tarzan swing. It was 90 degrees and the way, and no, they landed face down in trout water that was full of other disgusting things besides the trout.
Well, and when I was a kid, my family was really outdoorsy. There was a lot of fishing, a lot of camping, a lot of that sort of thing. And I remember as a child being on a boat with my dad and my uncle and a couple of other people, and I was wearing a life jacket. And I went to jump, and my dad grabbed my life jacket and said, "No, that water is freezing. If you hit it, you will not functionally be able to remember how to swim. It's going to knock the breath out of you. That is not safe. You
Yeah,
cannot jump in freezing cold water like that." And that's
right.
all this ride was how far can you launch yourself out into the freezing cold trout water?
The only way it would have been worse is if it was piranhas in the water instead of trout.
Yes. Oh my goodness. And everyone who worked there was like 14, 15, 16 years old. They were all drunk. They were all stoned. They were leaving to have sex in a shed. Apparently, they had a video of the sex shed, which sounds like the worst thing in the world. I can't imagine being like, okay, this is going to be fun.
Being intimate with somebody in 95 degrees, stinking, disgusting weather. And the drinking age in New Jersey at that time was only 18. So high school students could easily pass. And even if it was 21, I think they would have just winked at it and let it go. Because obviously safety was not their number one concern for their employees.
Yeah. Oh my God. It was just horrifying to watch. Every decision was worse than the one that came before it. Every and the whole time. And Uncle Gene signed off on all of this. He thought this was great. At one point, they were telling stories that the rumors were that he had a machine gun in his desk, and somebody came in and had done something dangerous. I don't remember what they were doing, but something that they were riding a ride in a certain way was dangerous. And he had a fake cattle prod that didn't have any kind
Oh
of
my God.
electricity to it. And so, to stop people from doing dangerous things on this ride, he faked shocking someone to death with a cattle prod as a warning that if you do this dangerous thing, we will cattle prod you.
To play a little game with myself called Count the Felonies. You're like, okay, that's a class 2 misdemeanor. Oh yeah, there's that one. Yep, okay. And it's ridiculous. And I found myself doing the same thing watching this. Okay, we got 60 counts of reckless endangerment, fire code violation, all of them. I just kept listing them. And the medical tent with the weird little circle and the
Oh,
explain that one because
so when you got hurt at Action Park, because you were going to get hurt at Action Park,
yes, it was gonna
um,
happen. It was a given.
you would go in the medical tent, and there was not a nurse. There was a 16-year-old in board shorts and flip flops who had a spray bottle. But it was like a spray bottle filled with what I understand to be a combination of rubbing alcohol and iodine. And they had a circle painted on the floor, and you stood in the middle of it, and they were going to spray you 3 times. And if you stayed inside the circle for all 3 sprays, you got like a prize because it was the most painful thing in the world. And nobody would hold still to get sprayed 3 times in a row.
Right.
They were trying to get you to hold still so that you wouldn't get infected in where you had your skin ripped off when you went down the alpine slide or whatever.
Yeah, you were either coming home in a cast or a casket. That was that was your options.
Yeah, pretty much. Oh, it was painful to watch. And all of these kids watching them be like, this is a great idea. Not one of them.
I'm one of these people that when I watch figure skating in the Olympics, when they do a jump, I hold my breath. I'm afraid for these, you know. And that's what this documentary was. It was a series of jump scares, only in real life.
Oh, and the disregard for safety or financial security on Gene's part, his approach was that he didn't want to have insurance. He felt like that was a waste. So he made up a fake insurance company and faked his own paperwork,
And
which
on his own stationery and made it look very official.
I when that happened, my daughter looked right at me to see how I was going to react because she knows that insurance is like my work history.
That
And
is your thing.
I was just like, oh, that's the worst thing. I hate him. I hate him. I was saying we had done Ocean Gate, where he made up his own insurance, and then this one where he made up his own insurance that didn't exist. Um, and I think when applying for jobs, if you're not applying for like a massive company that is clearly well regulated, you should maybe ask about their insurance. And if it comes from like a
Yeah,
company you've never heard of before, maybe don't work there. Because if something happens to you or the people that are there under your watch, there will be nothing to pay out.
that's right. You shouldn't go with like Leo's House O Insurance and Wafflery or something. And
Yeah, I mean,
on the notes, it was so funny because you wrote, "It's an insurance agent. This documentary is making me very angry." And you just kept going. It was very funny.
yeah, I mean, if you cannot get insurance, that is a sign that what you are doing is so dangerous, no one will insure you. And so that should
It,
be like a warning light.
one would think. I mean, if you're a shitty driver, your premiums are going to be through the roof. Some places will not insure you at all if you're a bad enough driver.
At one point in this, as I'm writing the notes about keeping a Mach 10 machine gun in his drawer and the cattle prod incident, my notes just say, I can't
Right.
believe I can't get anyone to give me money to build up this podcast, but that asshole got funding for Action Park.
That's right. And my favorite of the notes was, um, one of the people involved was Donald Trump because of course he was. And then you wrote Trump refused to endorse him because it was too unhinged even for him. That says it all.
I mean, yeah, realistically, that should have been the title card for this documentary. Quite, quite frankly.
Donald Trump refused to insure this man or to fund this man.
Oh my goodness. And this was not even like this was just the very tip of the iceberg with this. They talked to people whose family members died at Action Park, and we
Oh
got
yeah.
to see people who were badly injured at Action Park, and one woman who was a employee there told a story that horrified me down to my bones, where she was in charge of they had like a motorboat ride where you would 8 boats at a time would go 3 laps around this loop in this lake, and they were leaking oil and gas.
Oh
And
yeah.
it was killing everything in this lake except for the snakes that were very happy to bite the shit out of you if you got out of the boat. Oh yeah, it was horrifying. And she told a story about this guy who got his boat going too fast. He somehow managed to undo the safety mechanism that prevented the boats from going too fast, and got it going as fast as he could, launched it on top of another boat and landed on top of somebody, and the propeller was cutting into his neck as he's leaning forward and sluicing blood. And the woman who is basically the lifeguard or the running this ride had to go over and whack this dude with a yardstick to make him let go of the throttle because she was afraid that the guy underneath him's hair was going to get caught into the propellers and just rip his,
Oh.
like, basically scalp him. And the guy just jumped off his boat and
Ow.
went on to the next ride. Like, he didn't just
To the
charge
next
at
thing.
somebody.
Yep.
It, it,
And then I love the part where they were talking about how the employees would search for bodies at the bottom of the river or the bottom of the pool. That was the wave
oh,
ride,
yeah, the
the
wave.
wave wall, right? The wave pool, and they had a part of it called the death zone, and they would have to look for oh my god.
Oh, and talking about the wave pool, they said that
Yeah.
that was the place where most people died in the park because it was so easy to end up pulled under the water and not be visible to anybody.
Right.
And it was just murky, gross water that had muddy runoff and all sorts of nastiness in it. Plus, they said that there was a fair amount of gore from people's open wounds just weeping into this pool. And at no point did they ever stop letting people in the pool and maybe clean out the blood and shit and mud and
So it was biohazard on top of everything else. Oh my god.
and
One of these people, if I get a paper cut, I'm going like, is this gangrene? Am I gonna you know, and my dad would always be like, yeah, they're gonna have to cut it off at the elbow. So I cannot imagine swimming, wading, any way being involved in a river of shit. I mean, it's just ah.
oh, and like they had something that they called the Colorado River Ride, which was
Mm,
basically
like
described as
the
a
lifeguards.
yeah, it was
Right.
described as a whiplash machine
Yeah.
because it wasn't designed well, and they put you in this like tube, and they would push you down, and Uncle Gene wanted it to be like you were really rafting down the Colorado River. And several employees had to stop him and say, "This is not actually the Colorado River. We need to put some safety measures in place so that people don't die." And one woman who was there, she got bumped by somebody else in their raft, and it caused her to slide up the side of the wall of the Colorado River ride, and it had a exposed like screw or nut or something that had they had covered it, but the covering had come off, and it like ripped open part of her face and down her arm, and like,
Oh,
oh, It just, I cannot imagine. And Uncle Dean did not want lifeguards there. So he's like, there aren't lifeguards on the Colorado River. And guess what? Getting fist fights halfway down this ride. And at some point in the documentary, somebody said Action Park was like the movie The Purge. And kind of, yeah.
Oh, yes. Yeah, it totally, or the Hunger Games. It's I was stunned that they did not have an area of the park where they hunted each other for sport. I really am surprised that there wasn't some sort of last man standing kind of thing, because yeah, the purge, absolutely. And I was stunned to find out that this lasted until 1996. This madness went on for over a decade. I thought it closed long before that.
And like anytime you have any kind of amusement park situation, there are going to be people who are drunk or unhinged or stupid. And I know I've
Or
heard these stories.
drugs, or yeah.
I like there was somebody at, I want to say Disney World in Florida, whose hat came off on a ride and he jumped back into the track to get his hat and the next track came through and beheaded him. And so
Oh,
there's only so much you can do. There are going to be people who do stupid, stupid shit. And, you take the safety precautions you can and you try to make sure everybody's going to be okay. Action Park was kind of like, what if we beheaded you with a ride? Wouldn't that be cool? Like, that was their approach.
I'm imagining the Grim Reaper as the ticket taker, standing there, and unlike other theme parks, when a ride injured or God forbid killed somebody, they didn't close the ride down or address what the engineering problem was. Was it user error? Was it this? Was it, is it faulty mechanic? They didn't do any investigation. They were just like, oh, well, next, madness.
And apparently, like, they talked to people who had been 911 operators and had worked with the local police, and they said that the majority of the calls in Vernon Township for local police were from Action Park when it was open. And that the average customer at Action Park was just insane, was the quote from the documentary. And kind of, yeah, I believe it, because if everyone understood that Action Park was dangerous and not someplace that they should be, the smart people and the cautious people did not go and they did not let their children go. It was the
Mhm,
neglectful parents and the drunks and the people who really didn't have any understanding of the situation who were going. And
mhm.
that was his whole audience, was people who were basically like there to stare death in the face because they thought it was funny.
And that's why my senior class trip, which was supposed to be to Action Park in 1985, that's why they changed their mind and took us to Long Beach Island instead. Of
Well, and apparently, like, the Grand Prix car ride was set up right next to the beer tent, and drivers would
course
run
it
off
was.
course and chase down employees and try to drive through the beer tent. Like, people treated it like it was Grand Theft Auto. Like, the point
Oh yeah.
was to run down people.
Uh, that, now I'm imagining it. Action Park as a video game. Oh my God.
What? That
Clean up.
actually, I love that idea. Like,
I,
but like even they talked about some kids figured out how to override the speed monitors on the Grand Prix cars and took the cars out on the highway that ran through the middle of the park. Like
so we can add theft of property, vandalism to count the felonies. Yep, yep.
and they had
Oh
one
my
ride.
God.
They had one ride that should have been fine. It was little like the fake armored cars that looked like tanks from the military and the windows were screened in with chain link and that they launched tennis balls at one another. That should have caused no damage to anybody. And one guy figured out that if you soaked the tennis balls in gasoline and lit them on fire, it created fire launch or whatever it was he called it.
Trebuchet.
Like they looked at
Where
this.
are they getting all the gasoline from? So many of these things involve gasoline.
Like, I don't know. It had to have been one of the employees because I can't
Oh, I'm
imagine,
sure.
or maybe like a drunk park attendant who stumbled into a shed full of gas because they needed to keep gas in the boats and the cars and was like, "Oh, I bet I could light stuff on fire with this." And
Oh,
they had the ride
oh, and
back. Oh,
the
yeah,
once a year party that I cannot pronounce.
it's the Come On, I Wanna Lay Ya party.
Thank you. Which was basically a bunch of drunken toddlers passed out on the furniture all weekend long, with no adult regulation. Oh my God.
My stomach literally dropped when I saw the images from that party because I can only imagine the extraordinary amount of rape and sexual assault that happened
Of
with
course.
drunk teenagers and they're passed out. And like, I know that
Yeah.
I went to parties and things where you had to be careful and stuff because somebody knew you had to stay sober so that everybody else didn't get assaulted. Like we had to plan that out. But this seemed like it was designed for if you would like to be assaulted, come to the Come On Leia party or whatever. Um,
Oh, yeah. And it wasn't reported. Absolutely not. Either Uncle Gene would have, like, bribed or paid off, the victims. But in the early 80s, date rape wasn't really a thing. Like, of course it happened, but you know what I mean?
yeah,
It was hard.
it wasn't
Thank
acknowledged
you.
as a
Yes,
crime or like a bad
as a
thing.
crime, or that it was rape. It was something that happened when you were making out and got a little carried away, and oops, the girl passes out, but I'm just gonna finish anyway. Yeah, it wasn't acknowledged as an actual sex crime. So I'm sure that 90% of them went unreported.
Oh, it was just awful. And then they started talking about the Alpine slide, which was the ride that injured more people than any other ride at Action Park.
Hmm.
And it started from the very beginning because you had to be in like a ski lift to get up to the top of the slide. And you had it
Hmm.
like a little, when you're in gym class and you're playing scooter hockey and you've got like it's a little wooden square on four wheels kind of thing. It
Oh, yes.
Essentially one of those that people are going to ride down the Alpine slide, and you had to carry it with you on the ski lift up to the top. And so people would drop them on people who were going down the Alpine slide underneath them because they thought it was hilarious to drop shit on people when they were sliding. And then the slide
Yeah,
was
yeah.
made of legitimate cement and asbestos, is what they built this slide out of.
I'd feel better going to a park designed by coked out carnies.
Like, this ride, the Alpine slide, ended up with people with full body burns, skin ripped off. Like this was the ride that killed the boy that we talked to his parents
Right,
in this because it sent him flying off the ride and he hit his head on a rock and he died. And
right.
they said that on an average day there were 50 to 100 injuries on the Alpine slide alone, and a weekend
Right.
day was double that. So literally hundreds of injuries every day, regular deaths, like, and nobody was
Mhm.
doing anything about it.
Yeah, and the boy who was electrocuted? Oh
Oh,
my
yeah.
God.
They have one
I mean, well,
kayak ride.
yeah, how did that happen? Kayak ride, that's right.
Yeah, the kayak ride where you were paddling around like this space, but they had open electric wires at the bottom of this like water river thing that you were kayaking down, and it was exposed, and when he put his paddle down, it connected with the open electrical wires and fried him for all intents and purposes.
Oh, my God.
But like this was so bad that injuries were not reported. The town of Vernon Township made them buy their own ambulance because the town couldn't devote resources to it anymore. They just couldn't afford
Right.
it.
They couldn't constantly but be diverting there. Yeah.
And Uncle Gene's statement, like every time he talked about it, was that he wanted to give people their freedom. You had the freedom to choose how you were going to ride this ride, what you were going to do with your body, kind of thing. And he didn't want to be bridled by government. regulations and he
Oversight, right?
and so he just skirted every rule, every regulation. He wanted you to have the freedom to kill yourself or injure yourself if you thought that that would be fun.
And pay for it, no less.
Yeah. Um,
And I love the fact that they actually showed customers photographs of mangled bodies of, of former customers that had gotten hurt on that particular ride. Does that?
and they talk about this all was happening. Gene refused to settle any cases and he made you
Oh
go
yeah.
to court and go through the whole thing. And then he would not pay you. If the judge found in your favor, he refused to pay. Court marshals had to come and take it from him by force if you were going to get
Mhm.
paid for what you had won in court. So he just made this a horrifying process. And towards the end of the documentary, they're talking about the 80s being the last decade of unsupervised fun for kids. And
I agree.
realistically, that's pretty true. I mean, the 90s still had a
Yep.
little bit of it, but it was less than that. Um, but that was the point where your mom kicked you out of the house and was like, don't come back till the lights are on.
Yeah, well, the thing was also in the 80s, inflation was so high that both parents had to work. You needed two salaries to even maintain living conditions. So that was the generation of latchkey children. We would come home, there'd be nobody in the house. We would throw a DiGiorno's in the micro. We fended for ourselves, and but our parents just weren't there to bubble wrap and foam pad the world for us, you know. But you're
Yeah.
right. Yeah, that was the last that was my generation is the last one. Thank God. I'm stunned that anyone my age is still alive.
Well, every time I start to think that my daughter is missing out because she can't just go and run free the way I did as a kid, I see something like this or serial
Mhm.
killer documentaries where little girls were just disappearing from a town and like 11 or 12 girls would die before you move on to another town.
Oh,
And
yeah, yeah.
and I'm just like maybe it's better that she's not out, just doing whatever the fuck. Like
Right.
it,
Well, and see, the other thing though you have to remember is all of all of my friends, our moms all knew each other.
yeah.
So if I disappeared, which I never would because I was that kind of kid, my mom could call all my friends and go, "Hey Sharon, it's Kathy. Is Roxanne over there with Cindy? Oh, she is? Okay. No, I don't need to talk to her. Okay, bye, Sharon." And that would be it. Or I would call and I say, "Mom, I'm going to Susan's instead of Cindy's, so call Mrs. Lester if you need me." Okay. And then Marianne, hi, Kathy, hi, is Roxanne. Everyone knew each other's phone numbers. We'd been to each other's houses. We had barbecues galore for some reason. That was my hometown thing was barbecues. We knew what everybody did for a living. We patronized each other's businesses, the mom and pop stores and so we all kind of raised the children together. If I got injured at a friend's house, that friend's mom would take me to the ER. Wouldn't just dump me back at my house. So we had that security at least.
Yeah, and if you were a kid and you were being a jerk at the grocery store, the next time your mom went to the grocery store, they were going to tell her. Like, you were not going to get away
Mhm.
with that. So, yeah, there
Yeah,
was something to be said about everybody kind of watching out for everyone's children in a way that doesn't happen anymore.
right.
My if my daughter tried to go out when she was younger, like she looks way older than she is. So now
She does.
it wouldn't be an issue if she was out doing stuff now. But like if she was 8 or 9 and trying to walk down to the playground that's literally 1 block down and 1 block over, it's a very short trip. She could make it on her own with no problem. Somebody would have called the police on her when she was 8 because she would have been out by
Oh
herself.
yeah. When I'm working at my mall job, I see so many unattended children, like children, 6, 7 years old. There's no adults. I'm looking around and I will say, where's your mom? Where's your dad? And no point. And inevitably, it's on an adult on the cell phone texting or something like that. I'm like, I, what has happened? We should send them all to Action Park. Maybe they can get clubbed into unconsciousness, and then maybe they'll, take care of their children better. God.
Yeah, it's a very different world, but in the late 70s, 80s and in the early 90s, it was not uncommon for kids to get on their bikes and go and do whatever. And they talked about a lot of these kids got on their bikes and went to Action Park and didn't tell their parents where they were going
Ooh.
because their parents did not want them to go to the death park.
To the death park, right? Yes. Oh, I can just imagine what would have happened to me if I had tried anything like that. I would not be here.
Yeah,
Amazing.
it was so hard. And then they were talking to a woman who was an editor for a local paper who was battling with Gene this whole time. Like she was trying to, fight back against him because he was essentially for unregulated hypercapitalism. That's all he wanted. So he was buying houses for elected officials and giving people free memberships and season passes and like
Hmm.
he was essentially buying his way into, not being monitored by anybody. And because she was looking into his whole shenanigans, he had her fired. He threatened local officials that if she
Hmm.
kept her editor job, she was gonna he was gonna push back and stop, buying them shit. So they had her fired. And then at one point they brought in that he had potential mob ties. Um, and
Because
then
of course he did.
he had this guy, Bob, who was his go-to friend who worked in the financial industries. He was a stockbroker and he would sell
Mhm.
shares or like investments to bring in money to fund anything Gene wanted. If Gene wanted to build a new ride or whatever, he went to Bob and Bob got him the funds for it. And then Bob was found guilty of money laundering and bankruptcy fraud, and the park finally saw attendance decline as lawsuits became a real big thing in the early 90s.
Right.
And
Right.
the park didn't close until 1996, but Gene himself, like, he ended up being, he was indicted on 110 counts of fraud and theft and conspiracy. He was ordered to give up his parks, but instead of following court orders, he just became a shitty person and stopped paying his bills and tried to make life hell for everyone else. And in the end, that worked.
And then he was elected president of the United States. Oh no, wait, that's somebody else.
But yeah, they sold him the land just to make him leave him the hell alone. Because he was just out making life impossible for everyone. He was
Right.
just a terrible person. And in the end, like the land got purchased, the company got purchased, and it was renamed Mountain Creek and turned into kind of a very generic water park, which, is a breath of fresh air in comparison to this.
Yeah.
Um,
Yes.
and then when Gene died in 2012, um, the woman whose son had died that they spoke to in the documentary,
Yeah.
she came home and her husband said, "Get out the best bottle of red wine we've got. We're celebrating." And she goes, "Why?" He said, "Gene Mulvihill died today." And by God, they celebrated.
Awesome. I would definitely raise a glass as well, virtually. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
Um, and then
well, this has been amazing.
they talked about like how basically the spirit of Action Park lives on in things like Fire Festival and Theranos and like all of this unregulated like Woodstock 99 and all
Burning
the
Man. And what's right.
and it was like a crazy 80s movie brought to life almost. Um and then
Reminded me of Final Destination, actually.
yeah,
All the Final Destination movies.
in fact Final Destination 3 is they're at an amusement park and she has
Hmm.
that like image of everybody dying on a ride and then the ride does collapse but they all
Vision, right.
survived it. But yeah, it was very much
Right.
set in an amusement park. It could have been an action park like that would have fit
Well, I would absolutely,
um
absolutely.
and the only thing that made me upset was at the end of the documentary they're talking to people and they're like, Well, it wasn't safe, but it was what we had, and, one guy made a comparison of, like, scraping your knee is the same as going to Action Park, and I was like, "No, no,
No.
I understand nostalgia and looking back at this time and, like, feeling, like, a desire for the freedom that you had to be able to go do those things, but it killed people and injured people, and nobody should have been going to this park."
I mean, my thing was Pizza Hut, Scrabble, and MTV in my living room with my 3 best friends. That was a good time for us, for dorky indoor kids like us. We didn't need to be set on fire or attacked by bees or have snakes try to strangle us and have flaming tennis balls thrown. I mean, I would have just, what are you insane? Why do you want to do this? Like, and more than once, people went back more than once. Like,
Yeah, I feel like this documentary is an excellent example of why government regulation is so important
yeah,
and why you cannot make decisions based on something being profitable and that being your only driving force.
right.
It That's just not an acceptable approach to business. And all the deaths and injuries that are part of Action Park are exhibit A to that.
Yeah. Oh yes. And Gene has so much blood on his hands. I hope he's suffering in the afterlife by having to ride his own rides over and over.
Instead of having his liver pecked out by birds, he just has to go in the cannonball loop over and over every day.
Nice, nice reference.
But on that note, thanks for
Yes.
listening to Real Stories, Real Problems with your hosts, Rachel and Roxanne. We hope you enjoyed our deep dive into hypercapitalism and the importance of government regulation and the documentary Class Action Park. Join us again next week for a glimpse into another financial problem and a documentary all about it. If you enjoyed our show today, please remember to like, subscribe, and leave us a review on your podcast app. Thanks for listening. See you again next week.
Bye for now.